I'm Chaordix. I'm the president and CEO of Platform Calgary. I'm really excited about our event today. The topic actually came out of one of our previous sessions that was hosted by Shelley Kuipers, one of our members of our Platform Advisory Roundtable. And she said, wouldn't it be great to hear from Calgary companies that are working with international global customers? Because truly we are trying to build a global ecosystem here in Calgary. So we want to hear about how they formed and managed those relationships with those customers, and hear a global perspective from a major global customer that's using a Calgary-based company as a solution for their work. And I have to say, I'm a super fanboy as a parent of now adult kids, but to have Johnny from Lego here with us today is a huge treat for me personally, and I think our whole team. I want to say that several members of the Platform Calgary team, plus people from the broader innovation community in Calgary, have started a journey to learn more about the Indigenous heritage of our city and our place. In particular, we're building a 50,000 square foot innovation center in Calgary's East Village to really learn about the land that we're on and how it relates to the broadest picture of Calgary's history. So in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we truly honor and acknowledge Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda and Tsuut'ina nations. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. Finally, we acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, play, innovate, and build things on this land, and in so doing, honor and celebrate this territory. We're committed to learning more about our heritage and what we can do to work with our Indigenous communities and peoples. And so we're just started on this journey. We'll be recording today's session to share with those who are not able to join live. And if you have any questions, please share them in the Q&A. There's a chat and a Q&A. We'd really like you to use the Q&A so that panelists and all attendees can see, and then we'll have the opportunity to address them throughout the event as well as at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Honorable Doug Black, Honorary Chair of the Platform Advisory Roundtable, and someone with a perspective that is Alberta-wide, but also Canada-wide on what's happening in innovation in our community. Senator Black was elected by Albertans as Senator in Waiting in 2012 and was subsequently appointed to the Senate in January 2013. Prior to serving in the Senate, he practiced law and served as a board member or advisor to several Canadian businesses. He was appointed Queen's Counsel in 2002 and was named in 2012 as one of Canada's most influential lawyers by Canadian Lawyer magazine. We're honored to have you with us. Over to you, Doug.
There we go. I'm having trouble getting off video.
Can you turn it on? There you go. Or no, not yet.
The host has asked you to start your video. Okay.
There you go.
Am I okay?
You're on.
Well,
Thanks,
good.
Doug.
Listen, great. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone who's with us. Thank you for the opportunity of presenting remarks this morning, and thanks for the opportunity of serving as an honorary chair of Platform. It is an honor for me. So our purpose at Platform, and my purpose as a senator, is to spread the message that something very important is happening in Alberta, and something very important is happening in Calgary around tech startups. And Platform's role in that is as a cornerstone. They are the folks that present opportunities, support entrepreneurs, and share the narrative of our success. And this is what this series is achieving. It's helping to tell the story of Calgary as a startup center, as Alberta as a startup center, and it's working. This is volume 5 of the series, as Terry pointed out. And to date, we've successfully explored Calgary's advantages, Calgary's challenges, and we've heard from global startup centers in Europe, in the US, and across Canada, so we can learn from others. So today, we're going to focus on how local Calgary businesses are building global connections and why global companies are choosing Calgary-based solutions for their needs. And to moderate our conversation this morning is Mr. Pat Lohr. When I think of Pat, I think of someone who is focused, connected, and committed. His success as an entrepreneur is well known, and his deep involvement in the venture capital world is transformative. But to me, it's his commitment to the startup community in Calgary and in Alberta that is so important, and his commitment to the broader community through his work as a board member of Alberta Treasury branches and Alberta Innovates is what resonates so strongly with me. To me, Pat is a person who is committed to success beyond his own. I'm very, very happy to call upon Pat Lohr as our moderator this morning. Everyone enjoy the session. It should be great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you for those kind words. What an honor it is to share the stage with you. Absolutely fantastic morning, and I'm super excited to share the stage with the people that we have on. First up, we have Johnny Castro, Digital Product Director and Head of Lego Ideas. What an iconic company. Really looking forward to hearing from you, Johnny. And Terry, CEO of Chaordix, just at the forefront of Calgary Digital and doing some amazing things. Johnny and Terry, can I get you to join us on stage here? And let's start off the conversation. Terry, maybe start with you. You've been a longtime friend. Maybe give the crowd, for the people that don't know you, 30 seconds on yourself, and then transition a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Chaotix. I mean, this company is really at the forefront of and was always at the forefront. It's basically helping democratize ideas. Basically, ideas can come from anywhere, and helping source ideas from the crowd. Terry, you're still on mute.
Just noticed that, yeah, muted. Thanks, Pat. Yeah, so for myself personally, quick 30 seconds. I'm an engineer by education, had a quick cup of coffee in the energy sector before returning for my MBA, and then worked at Nortel for 10 years in finance and then in product management before leaving and entering the early stage / startup world. And so have been involved in half a dozen or so companies, have been involved with some successes, having been acquired by the likes of BlackBerry, RIM, Wind River, and then Accruent most recently with a company here in Calgary. So I've been involved in that early stage market for a number of years. Joined Chaordix in 2013 as the COO, and have been working with that organization through the last 7.5 years, and committed and strongly value the relationship we have with Lego. And it's clearly a marquee client for us. They're a world leader in terms of open innovation, and they're on the Chaotix platform in order to accomplish that. So I'm sure we'll talk more about the product and some of the things that we're doing in the marketplace, but at that, I'll just turn it over to yourself to introduce Johnny.
Yeah, thank you for that, Terry. Very helpful. Johnny, Lego probably doesn't need any introduction, but maybe I'll throw you a different question, which is what an iconic company to work for. You've got probably one of the most interesting jobs there. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get this job?
Oh, that is certainly an interesting question. So I've been with the Lego Group for 5 years, and I was lucky to join with a background from digital product management and technology strategy. And I was in the US at the time, relocated with my wife, who worked for the Lego Group, and they were looking for somebody with a digital product background in the US who also had an innovation management type degree, which I had, and who would click well with the Danish management team. So I was basically lucky to be geographically located in the right position, and that served me well.
Outstanding. And Johnny, I'm sure that you get cornered at parties and have people just tell you stories about Lego forever. We'll try not to do that, but I'm having a moment here. I really want to talk about my Lego collection. I got my BB-8 in the background there, so I'm really excited to dig in with you. Terry, maybe go back to you on this. How was the connection made with Lego and Chaotix?
Yeah, the connection was before my time, but and it was somewhat of a serendipitous scenario. There's an individual by the name of Roland Harwood who works out of the UK for a group called 100% Open. They're in the innovation space, a consultant group, and they were working with Lego at the time. Early manifestation of the community in Lego was under CUSO, and that was being managed in the early days. And there was discussion, as I understand it, to move off of CUSO just for different requirements and restrictions with the platform. And Roland made the introduction into Chaordix at the time. That conversation kind of moved on and presented the opportunity to get involved. And so in May or early Q2 of 2014, we migrated the community that was on CUSO over to the Chaordix platform. It was about 150,000 members, give or take, at the time. And today we've got about 1.75 million members in that community. So I've seen a substantive growth over that last 7 years in the Lego Ideas community.
Yeah, that's perfect. A great story, and I want to dig into that a little bit more. And Johnny, maybe turn it over to you. It sounds like you might have, according to the timeline, inherited the Chaotix relationship as well. So maybe a slightly different question for you. How have you found the working relationship with Chaotix? And maybe we always talk in digital products. I'm sure you guys are using the same language. What superpowers does Chaotix give you as a digital project manager?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. I think the key thing when coming together as a global company with many different activities and a company like Chaordix, who are very good at a specific thing, is exactly the intersection where we have a job to do and an audience and a reach and a scale and all these things, but we need to be masters of many things. And I think what Chaordix have brought to us is an expertise in building the kinds of communities, both in terms of technology platforms, certainly, but also global operations and in being able to start up and make community thrive. Program management, in the sense that you need to engage people not just when you need something from them, but in a continuous and ongoing relationship. So a deep understanding of those capabilities and what's needed there. So I think it's simply clicked well that Chaotix were busy building a platform as or product as a service, almost a platform as a service, and we were able to leverage that into what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and Johnny, maybe we can take a minute to really dig into that, because people have such an affinity for Lego. We grew up with it, and now I think the latest product lines are really having old people like me spend thousands of dollars on Lego. And you guys must talk behind the scenes about how people love Lego so much, and as a company, how do you reciprocate that? Like, how do you work with your community? Maybe you can take a minute and dig into that a little bit. Tell us some of the thinking behind that.
Yeah, I think the story of the Lego Group's interaction with the community is a very interesting one, and it can certainly, if I brought in my leader who's been with the community for 3 decades, it could certainly take him much more than 1 minute to talk about. But I think what's interesting is that we discovered our community. It was not. It's not something that we had to build, and I think that's one of the privileges of a well-loved brand like this, and what makes it so exciting to work with for us is that the passion is in people already. It's something that we discovered. I think initially our sense of seeing a community way before my time was when the original Lego Mindstorms line came out, and almost immediately was hacked by a bunch of people at MIT. And the Lego Group's reflex response was, you can't do that to our products. But we had people, my manager Tomo, go have a dinner with them, and he discovered a community of passionate people who were definitely not here to mess with the Lego Group's intentions or anything, but they were hackers and people who wanted to make something in the world, which is what the Lego products are all about. And so from there, we began to see the understanding that actually there are forums on the internet back in early 90s, BBSs even before then, where people were having conversations. So what we need to understand in working with them is that it has to come from respect, reciprocity. It needs to be equitable. And I think one of the key things for us to operate from is a participation promise, that if you come to us, you're taken seriously. You might not always win. You might not always get what you hope for. That's the nature of a competition, a product design competition like this. But you will be treated with respect and welcomed. And I think that's reflected in a remarkable community. We have, when you see some of the global social media for etc., we count ourselves lucky and happy and proud that our community is friendly, it's open, it's inclusive, and it's a nice place to join.
Johnny, I'm glad you brought the MIT and Mindstorm story up, because for most of us, it's a toy. But if you're a 30 or 40-year-old robotics engineer, you probably grew up on Mindstorms and you benefited from this MIT community. And so it's even more important to them, because it probably had quite a bit to do with building their careers, as opposed to being just more of a toy and a memory for the regular civilians out in the world. So thank you for that story. It's just an absolute amazing reminder how Lego has affected our lives. Terry, back to you now. You take this example of Lego, absolutely legendary, again, needs no introduction. It means something to everyone. It has a warm place in our hearts. How are you taking your experience with Lego here and approaching other global companies?
Yeah, great question, Pat. There's a couple of things that we've hugely benefited as a result of the relationship with Lego. As Johnny said, one of the things that we believe in is the value of community in terms of a crowdsourced opportunity, whether it be on a product design initiative, on user-generated content, whatever it is, but the brand getting closer to their end users. In the Lego world, they did this long before the internet gave us that global and technological reach. And so they were doing it in a very physical sense in terms of working with their community. They migrated onto a platform, grew the community, and we're one of a couple of different digital communities that Lego supports. Ours happens to be supported is targeted at more of the adult fans of Lego and the ideas that come out of the community. So it's been extremely beneficial. Now, at the same time, having to support 1.5 million members and go through that growth, we're a SaaS-based organization. We're on an AWS environment, and we have basically structured an architecture that allows us to grow with that community, as well as manage various peaks and demands on the system, which we've seen over the years. So for us as a product organization, huge benefits to make sure that our platform is robust. That has then led itself to credibility in terms of our opportunity to deal with other and get introduced to other organizations. So, when people look at co-creation or open innovation, Lego is immediately brought into the conversation because they've been doing it for 7+ years on a digital framework. And so it's not long before people recognize that platform that supports it is one of Chaordix. And so we end up in conversations, and it has benefited us over the years in terms of our both introduction to organizations, as well as inbound inquiries that people are interested in doing like Lego and with their product line. And so it's been extremely beneficial for us to establish a presence on a global stage.
Yeah, and Terry, maybe I can get you to put your coaching hat on,
Sure.
because you're an accomplished hockey coach, and maybe for the young entrepreneurs that are out there looking to go global, looking to do what Chaotix has done with Lego and other clients, what are your top strategies for these young companies going global?
Well, I think one of the things that we often lose sight of, I mean, technology has really shrunk the world. And so it makes it so easy to connect with a brand anywhere in the globe. But at the same time, one has to recognize that depending on where that organization sits, there are nuances you have to appreciate to be successful. Everything from what the data storage requirements are, given the sensitivity and privacy issues that are out there today, what are the cultural elements one has to consider, as well as just what are the things from a contract law perspective that one has to be aware of. So it's complicated. So we are often, I think, put in a position that because the ease of connecting, the ease of demonstrating, we get online, we do product demonstrations across the globe. And so one feels that obviously at that point, if there's a synergy between the organizations, there's a demand, it's just one step from market. And reality is that there's a number of things that have to be put in place to be successful. And so the hard and heavy lifting happens after that stage. And it takes a lot of homework, a lot of due diligence to appreciate all those different elements when going globally. So the go-to-market strategy on a global initiative, I think, is a key element for any business. So appreciating what are the elements that you might run into, what are the considerations, and then subsequently targeting the right brands that are both a fit for what you're offering, but also an ease of which you can become successful through the conversation, ultimately contracting a relationship for implementation.
Yeah, and fantastic. Terry, I think one of the great things about you, your coaching background, the great background with Chaordix is that I think there's a lot of young Calgary companies out there just looking up to all those super tough things that you talked about, which I don't think anybody else ever talks about. People only ever look at the headlines, and the details that you're talking about are super, super important for the big companies out there. It's a real key. And thank you for that. Johnny, I want to turn it back to you now and talk about Lego ideas and maybe how you how you work with the ecosystem of adult fans. And so we were talking a little bit before, and a few years ago when the big Millennium Falcon set came out, I actually paid someone to stand in line and spend, I forget what it was something like $1,000 to buy a Lego set for me. I still haven't finished it yet. It takes weeks to build. But what an exciting moment for me to get a hold of this limited edition unit. But maybe tie all those elements together. You have these crazy adults spending thousands of dollars on Lego. You're running Lego ideas. You have a digital online community. How does that all come together?
Yeah, I think it's a very important privilege for the Lego Group that we have a very vibrant community around us of content producers, YouTubers with significant reaches that are passionate about the product first and foremost, and they are you could say they are loyal to the product even more so than Lego as an organization, certainly. So in working with them, we are always very mindful that this is their hearts, that they care greatly about this, but it is hugely valuable to us that they talk about our products, that they engage others around them. So in a general sense, there's an entire ecosystem, not only of content producers, but also startups, entrepreneurs making apps for finding just that one element in your bin that you need for the particular build you're doing with AR, for example. Entire business models. We recently acquired Bricklink, a digital platform for buying and selling loose elements as a big part of the community. So there are at many levels, this community adds value, complements what we're doing. So it is a pleasure to work with. I would say for Lego Ideas specifically, one of the things that is kind of baked in is that, of course, we do crowdsourcing, and that's the topic that is always brought up because it's where the perceived value chain into the business, so to speak, and back out again through products. That's where that happens. But I would say that a key thing is actually product validation. in that you bring to Lego Ideas your product idea, you put it on the stage there, and then you need 10,000 people to support you. And once you're out of, I mean, you have your mom, your nearest family, you're probably going to need still 9,980 something people to support you. And so you have to produce marketing assets. You have to go out into the world, to Reddit, to Facebook, to your various places where you can engage with people who care about, whether it be flowers or a particular brand of motorcycle or whatever it is you're building. And so people go there and they market their thing, which huge halo effect around us that is extremely beneficial, and it helps us get validation of product ideas at a very early stage, right? So that's the great filtering. We have currently at any one point something like 3,500 active products on Lego Ideas, product ideas. We have an eye on 50 projects in the 10,000 support range right now for review for the next product, and there it's massively valuable to us that already 10,000 people have indicated interest in a community on platform, certainly of 1.75. It's funny, my notes is 1.6 because I did them a few weeks ago, Terry. That's the kind of growth we're seeing right now. But also that a lot of those people are new to the Lego product because they are maybe fans of a particular motorcycle property or a TV series or something, and they connect with the Lego product manifestation of their fandom, and that's how they get in contact with us. And I think that's an amazing mechanic, so to speak, of a community like this.
So Johnny, I want to double click on that number. Are you saying 50,000 new members in 2 weeks?
Something like that, yes. Yeah, that's the kind of growth we're experiencing right now.
Wow, that's incredible. Terry, you had something to add?
Yeah. Basically, I was just going to chime in there and say that, the community itself over the time has introduced 33 new products into the market. And as Johnny said, have gone through some sort of market validation as a result of the process. So when you submit a kit idea, it has to reach that 10,000 votes, as he said. There's an internal evaluation, and ultimately a choice is made, and it goes back out to the market. And so, for most of these folks, they're incented to just be recognized by Lego and have a product produced in the marketplace. And the thing that really has amazed me over the years is not only has the community matured, so has the Lego approach to celebrating those kit ideas. And so there was actually a Toronto individual, I wish I would have pulled his name, who brought to market the Yellow Submarine. He was taken over to the UK and on the famous road where the Beatles did their walk on the crosswalk and celebrated, and was at the store closest to that location for the product unveiling. So the success comes in the validation, and for all products, I think basically they're a limited release, and they've all more or less sold out over that time. So again, when you look at it, it's extremely valuable. The other part I would say is that, the platform is not standalone. We as an organization ensure that there is a link out to the existing social communities that exist today. So one of the things that we say is give social a purpose. So people are out there putting their hands up, acknowledging, liking, whatever it is that you as a brand are doing. We're saying embrace those individuals, bring them into a community, and help and work with them to help them better understand where you're going with a product line or a service, and at the same time let them tell you what's of interest to them. So it's hugely reciprocal and valuable to the brand, and that's where we see things that are becoming important. So we ensure that in our platform, it's not a standalone, and in fact links out into the social world, so you can subsequently broadcast the things that are happening, you're contributing, and as a result attract people back into the community, so you can organically grow the number of folks involved in the community that you're working with.
Terry, that's amazing, and I picked up on that line. Give social a purpose. Really love that. That should be your tagline if it isn't already. But I want to, and a couple of numbers just really popped at the top of my head here. Is that you need 10,000 votes minimum to kind of create a kit on Lego. I tell you, if I could get that many votes and get a kit, I think that would be my headline on LinkedIn, is that I created a Lego kit. That would be absolutely incredible. And that the community is now growing at close to 100,000, like 50,000 per every 2 weeks. So that's 100,000 a month. That is significant. It just
Well,
tells you how powerful this platform is.
well, you know, Pat, one of the things we saw over the last year as a result of the sort of the shut-in scenario, you know, puzzles and Lego were a big beneficiary of, you know, people at home looking for activities. And so the growth over the last 12 to 15 months inside the community has been substantial. So, I mean, it had been growing year over year, but the last 15 months, there's been a massive pop in the community.
Yeah, that's amazing. And congrats to you both for that. Johnny, I want to turn it back to you and maybe put on your mentor hat this time. We have a lot of young entrepreneurs in the crowd, and product management and product direction has got to be one of the toughest jobs to learn out there. Yet you've hit the top of the game here. And I want to just dig into some of the things that you were talking about, which is you have a huge fan base. You've got voices all over the internet. You've got people doing reviews. You've got people doing videos. You've got people on social. But what do you do as a product manager? What questions do you ask? And you talked about you talk about customer validation. Maybe weave together a couple of those elements. And what's your advice for young product managers?
The first thing that always pops into mind is the boring one, just a lot of resilience, I think, because you do need to juggle a lot of different stakeholders. Certainly. So I think the key thing is to thrive on the success of your consumers. That's probably the most important thing, because you're going to get a lot of rough decisions, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of uncertainty. Where do you bring things in the future? And it is of course a massive responsibility. You shouldn't put too much on the product manager, because there's a large team of people who are working on this, collaborating on this, and because of all the brains that are involved here, some of the very talented people at Chaordix as well. Eric, the VP of development, we work very closely with. A big part of that, certainly we have UX specialists, researchers. We work with a couple of universities. There are a lot of people involved in making this successful, but it is sometimes rough, and there is never going into something like this, experiencing massive growth, where do you get the people to support that? So there are a lot of decisions. So it's important to recognize and be happy in your heart that your consumers are successful, because that's where the energy should come from. So that's probably the most important thing I would keep front and center as I go into that.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. And maybe Johnny, I can follow up with a question on that, which is you have a lot of resources on your hands right now. You have a significant team. You guys are experiencing amazing growth, as Terry talked about during COVID here. If you're growing your community 100,000 people a month, there must be so many voices out there giving you 100,000 different opinions. How has Chaotix, maybe dig into it a little bit. Give us a little bit of specific product insight. How has Chaotix specifically helped your team around this area of community voice?
So I think we have been doing a bunch of different initiatives recently. So one of the key things is that we have implemented what sounds incredibly basic maybe when you say it like this, but poll systems, so that we are able to direct questions at very specific segments based on your behavior on platform, and to ask specific questions and learn about your habits, your preferences, what we might want to ask you. And I think that has been key in understanding where should we take things. We specifically invite members of the platform that have the specific characteristic, whether they're product idea makers, or they're contest participants, or they're socializers, or whatever roles they have, and we invite them in to ask them questions basically, and And I would say one of my best experiences with product development in the last few years was probably when we had the designer, one of the two designers of the NASA space rocket, the Saturn V, hop on a call with us and with the development team from Chaotix and our UXs and our engagement team to just talk us through their campaign and the process they had been in and what kinds of like aid that we could give them in a journey like that. And they specifically said to us, we need statistics. We need to understand and build over time, like how is our vote support growing over time? And that's something that we, with the Chaordix team, took back and developed and implemented and gave to the innovators on platform.
Johnny, that's well, yeah. Go ahead, Terry.
I was just going to quickly add to that. One of the things, getting back to some of the earlier questions and what Johnny alluded to there, is Lego has a very mature brand framework, as you can imagine. So there's the classic mission, vision, values elements, but they have a number of promises. And within the promise group is a partner promise. And that it comes through clear through our working relationship. And that promise is basically to ensure that there's mutual benefit to both the partner and Lego. And that's how they operate. So this morning, for example, Johnny alluded to, we're actively working with Lego on a regular basis. And our VP of development was involved in a quarterly planning session, was on the phone at whatever it was, 3:30 this morning with the group in Denmark and working through, okay, what's on the table for the next quarter? How do we make better use of the actual information we're collecting out of the community? What else does the community platform need to support the initiatives that Lego has planned over the next year or two? So it's a very symbiotic and tight relationship. That's very unique across all the other relationships, but it has created for us, a foundation of which we've worked with to build other relationships with the other global suppliers that we work, or global partners that we work with.
Yeah, and what an amazing story Johnny is telling. I feel like, Lego is an iconic brand, and yet Johnny comes in just over the top with name dropping. Like, he's talking about MIT engineers, he's talking about NASA engineers, just getting on the phone with him and talking product. Just absolutely amazing story. Terry, maybe build on that comment there, and when you're out there and talking to companies out there outside of Canada, trying to do international collaborations, where's the low-hanging fruit on this? You talked about COVID as well, so there's been certainly winners and losers on that. Maybe tie all those themes together and tell me what's on your kind of collaboration or partnership roadmap in the next 6 months.
Sure. So if you look at the platform and what we offer, it's really an opportunity to bring together a group of individuals that have a common interest at the core. And so we have done brand platforms like Lego, like Rust-Oleum. We've worked with American Airlines in the past, etc. But we've also done some internal employee communities. And if you think about it, the only thing that really changes is the audience. So one of the key aspects of building a community is obviously to understand the objectives that you're trying to achieve. Secondly is that there's got to be an investment. If you're just looking for the classic, semi-annual, hey, what would be interesting for you guys to find, that we refer to those as digital suggestion boxes. What we have is a persistent online community that you're always collaborating. And so you're gaining insights. You can generate user-generated content. You can run challenges. I mean, basically the Lego Ideas community is a challenge-based environment where people are introducing product ideas. So ideally for us, what we look for is someone that fits that mold and as well demonstrate a progressive aspect to how they are represented in the marketplace. Today's consumers, as a result of technology, have an ability to connect through smartphones, devices, etc., with brands. And a number of brands have taken a progressive approach and ensured that they are in fact working closely with their end users. If you look back historically, the definition of marketing is ultimately getting to a one-to-one relationship with your consumers. Technology, through platforms like what we have, enable that on a regular basis. The other part that's been extremely beneficial is that today's consumers are looking for brands that care about what they have to say. At the end of the day, they recognize that they are in control, as in they're spending their disposable income to purchase things from the brand. And so if you're willing to pay attention to what you have to say, you create a relationship. There's advocacy value in that scenario. There's clearly market value, gaining knowledge about what that brand or that individual wants from the brand. Now, again, it's not saying handing over the keys to the marketplace to say, where do we need to go next? But it's a data point that any marketer, any product management individual would value. We have a community with Rust-Oleum, which is a do-it-yourself community. And we have brand managers stepping into that community on a regular basis, popping down and saying, hey, I need a quick feedback from the marketplace. I want to understand of these 3 selections, whether it be label, maybe a paint color, whatever it is, how does the community react? And we turn that around in 24 to 36 hours. So huge value to a brand. So the efficiencies that a persistent online community provides to a brand is hugely valuable. So for us, we look for brands that are progressive, understand technology enablement, and subsequently are interested in getting closer to consumers. We still have a number of folks that are very cautious. The last thing I want to do is launch a community and expose what my interests are to my competitors. Well, the reality is every competitor knows what you're doing. So those that are thinking further ahead and just saying, let's get closer, let's establish a relationship, let's have an open communication, that's valued, that generates all kinds of benefits to the brand. And those are the ones that we look for ultimately to advance our market offering.
Right on. Thank you, Terry. And Terry, you're going to be back in about 20 minutes doing some Q&A. So I encourage the crowd to come back. And thanks for bringing up the Rust-Oleum community. I'm just looking out on my patio here, and I've got some rusty chairs that I have to paint. So some more work, reminders. Johnny, last word to you on this panel. What's on the roadmap for Lego in the next kind of maybe 6 to 12 months? And maybe there might be some insights as to, for, again, the young product managers, young CEOs out there, what they should be looking for out there as a trend.
So the first thing as a young product manager, you should probably not talk in a public forum about your roadmap for the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm afraid I can't share basically anything. It's a hard and fast rule to not talk about the future in those terms. I can talk a little bit about trends. So I don't know how sage advice it is, but I do think that what is going to shape the next decade is the area between, of course, technology and business. That's always been there, and for startups, that's the space you operate in, getting that product market fit. But it's also going to be stuff like the GDPR in Europe, data privacy, and data ethics. And I think those are the fields that we are highly focused on now. Being a global in a global environment, you need to, as Terry said earlier, you simply need to be very serious about being compliance and being able to navigate in all the different jurisdictions, etc. Also, I would say that diversity and inclusion is very much on the forefront of our minds in the Lego group, and it's something that we care deeply about. And I think the Lego Ideas community in particular is very much about the things that people create, and that's a big strength for us, because that allows anybody can come in the door and start to build up their product idea and participate and be part of a community. And that's certainly one of the aspects that we will focus on more, is lowering barriers. So I would say that without promising anything, certainly we'll start to look at language and translation. That's probably one of the things for the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm guessing that that Johnny, you guys are working on something top secret because it involves like the world's top scientists, and that's why you can't talk about it. So thank you. I understand why you can't share. You're going to be back with us in about 15 or 20 minutes to answer the questions from the crowd. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and love the insights. Super informative. And so at this time, I'd like to bring up Karen Schuett, who is the CEO and co-founder of Livestock Water Recycling, and Patrick McGinn, who's Executive VP of Business Operations at Cool IT Systems. Well, welcome to both of you. And you're both Calgary companies doing incredible things as far as the topic that we're talking about today, which is just how do you sell beyond Calgary? And Karen, maybe start with you. Tell us a little bit about the company. I'm guessing that man, this is super important when, when ESG is such an important topic, when we're concerned about the provenance of our food, when we're concerned about the footprint of what it takes to get our food. Tell us a little bit about that and what livestock water recycling does.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you. So we have created a water treatment system complete with a machine learning platform to modernize a very old-fashioned practice in farming, which is lagoon storage and land spreading of livestock manure. So you're really dead on there that this is a very important thing to modernize right now. It was a niche market. Probably the question I get asked most is why manure? But when we originally saw this problem, we were called to a farm in Alberta, actually, to discuss their livestock manure. And our company comes from a water treatment background. So we approached this as water treatment people. We had come from oil and gas. And approaching this just as a water treatment problem, we thought, wow, this is a massive market that needs, that's just being underserviced by technology. And when we looked even further, we noted that globally, all manure is treated the same way on livestock farms. So it wasn't an opportunity in Alberta or in Canada, it was a global opportunity, and has become even more and more prevalent and important as we've gone through in our company.
Yeah, which is to say that, I guess in summary, Karen, BS here is the same as BS all over the world, I'm guessing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And every farm is facing the same problem, really, globally. So, I mean, I think Terry said technology has shrunk the world, and it really has in our case.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that intro, Karen. And we'll come back to you on this. Right now, I want to switch to Patrick McGinn with Cool IT Systems. Patrick, maybe tie in your introduction of the company with a couple of hot trends right now. I'm guessing that digital transformation is the big thing right now, along with the new cryptocurrency phase, after going into hibernation for a few years. Talk about that and how that's affecting your company.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the digital transformation is interesting on two fronts for Cool IT. One, from our customers' perspective, it's a race to capture as much data as you possibly can and be informed by that data. And whether it be our OEM customers like Dell, HPE, Fujitsu, and so on, or we're trying to serve large data center organizations, or the large hyperscale data center builders themselves, the likes of Microsoft and Google, or in Asia, we have Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba. All of these groups are just capturing so much data right now and pouring it through just bigger and bigger data centers and more data centers. And so for groups like Cool IT on the hardware side, on the vendor side, it's just a really busy time for us. And that's really exciting. And a little bit of information on Cool IT is we don't have any Canadian customers. And so it's globalization and doing business internationally is every day for us. A lot of our customers could be in the US, but we work across Asia and Western Europe in big ways. And so that's really big for us. And we see our technologies and technologies like ours being used across many different data center applications. One of them being the cryptocurrency phenomena that we've seen over the last, nearly a decade now, but starting with Bitcoin and moving from there. And whether it be the cryptos or whether it just be other high performance computing applications, it's just a huge energy draw and energy used by all of these different centers. And so Cool IT's technology in liquid cooling is used by all of them. And so you have this relatively small Canadian company that needs to deploy their technology globally in every corner of the world. And that's been our challenge for a long time now, is to try and serve all those customers. I wish they were all in our backyard, but they're not. So devising strategies and executing on those strategies as quick as possible to serve those customers as best as we can has sort of been our game for the last 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, Patrick, I think that there's probably a whole other hour that we could spend talking about the point about how all your customers are international, none of them are Canadian. We don't have time for that today, but I'm gonna log that as a conversation that I want to have with you one day here, which is like that it shouldn't be that way. And maybe turn it back to you, Karen, on this is how do you connect with global customers, and maybe talk about do you have the same issue, which is like selling, are you having any troubles selling to Canadian customers as well?
We have the exact same issue. We have 0 Canadian customers. All of our work is in the US or international. So we are definitely in the same boat. We're trying to take a small Calgary company, manufacture here locally, and then ship all over the world. We do not have a Canadian customer. I have one that I think is going to be installed in Alberta this summer. So that's great news for us to finally have a showcase here where investors and people coming to visit us to look at our technology can actually come to Calgary and look at the technology locally instead of having to meet us in Wisconsin or in Lebanon or something to have a site tour. It will be wonderful to get something back in Canada. We have engaged traditionally so far with our clients directly. Our client in Lebanon just found us on our website and connected with us that way, asked to come tour a US facility and bought the system right at the site in Wisconsin. And then we delivered right from Calgary to Lebanon to the largest dairy producer there. So we've done that traditionally and are moving forward into a dealership model as we go forward and expand out more globally.
Wow, and that's an absolutely incredible story. How are you finding the decision-making process when people are buying these systems? Are these typically smaller businesses, or are they bigger ones where you have to go through decision-making committees? What are you finding in your industry?
It really depends for us. It could be an individual farm that's buying from us. In the US, we often will see an individual dairy farmer client. In that case, it's a small to mid-sized business. A dairy farm in the US is actually quite a large size business revenue-wise. When we look at something internationally, though, we're looking more at a larger corporate. That's what we've seen anyway. The company that we sold to in Lebanon, as I mentioned, it's the largest dairy producer in Lebanon, and they are vertically integrated. They make all their own milk and cheese and do everything at their site. So they're quite a large business, well funded by the family in Lebanon. And that project came about through a UN involvement due to pollution and contamination of the largest river in Lebanon. So they were ordered to do something at their facility, which isn't traditionally how we would get business, but it is an opportunity globally where people are looking to clean up things that have happened in the past or ways that waste has been treated in the past. And then this came directly to us from that large business. The World Bank was involved in funding it. And so it was quite a large project for us to get involved in.
And Karen, I love that story, and I love how you're dropping these bombs on us where it's like, hey, listen, there's this UN initiative and we're working with the World Bank and we're just this little old company in Calgary, right? Just an amazing story, and congrats on that. Patrick, turn it back to you now. Maybe the same question, like how are you getting a hold of your international customers? You're going after these big organizations. You mentioned Dell, you mentioned Dell EMC and a few others. How is that as far as penetrating those organizations? Because these are big organizations out there.
Yeah, it's interesting, Pat, because on one hand, it's different than Karen's group. I think in some ways where there may be many targets. Cool IT can look at a really big total addressable market, but at the end of the day, there's only a few discrete targets. There's no new Dell tomorrow that we find or new Google tomorrow that we find, and so we put an an exceptional amount of work and energy into relationship development with various different tiers of those organizations. And so we have our technical groups meeting with their technical groups, very often. We have our procurement team meeting with their manufacturing teams. We have our salespeople meeting with the procurement team. So it's this many layered sort of push into what we would call farming those accounts. We don't do a lot of hunting. That was done 5, 6, 7 years ago when we met these groups for the first time. So it's about investing in the relationship. It's about honing in on not just a general value proposition that works for our technology into the market, but what works exactly for that customer, that client, and really trying to develop technology that we can embed inside their systems that serves them and their end users very well. We almost always work directly. If there is some time shift that's difficult for us, or cultural barriers or language barriers, then we will work with third parties of some type. In Japan, that would be a good example where having very close relationships on the ground is very important to doing business. And so we have a group that we work with out there. But almost in every other place in the world, we try to have our own feet on the street if we can. So it's been interesting for us, and the engagement model with these big guys is different, but I would also say it's quite predictable, right? Because they are such large organizations, it's very programmed how they move through these different levels of collaborative design and then buying. And so we can predict what that looks like over time and plan based on that.
Yeah, and that's super useful, Patrick. I'm wondering, maybe tie into what Karen talked about, which is she's got companies finding out about her because the UN and the World Bank is talking about it. How are people finding out about Cool IT?
Yeah, well, interesting question. I think it comes from a few different directions. So I think our marketing group, and our sales groups do a phenomenal job of reaching out in two different ways. We stay relevant with the people who will ultimately buy from us, the Microsoft or the Dell or the HPE, but we do a lot of work engaging with the actual data center operators. So marketing directly to them on a push-pull strategy. And so we have people out at, it could be more standard trade shows, not this year, but typically working with groups to show them how our technology works and how it can benefit their total cost of ownership and their data center. But we're up against some just barriers in physics with Intel and AMD and NVIDIA launching this huge chips now. You simply can't air cool what you used to air cool, and so people are forced to Google liquid cooling, and Cool IT has done a lot of work to ensure that we're ahead of the pack in answering the call. We own the market share right now for most segments, and that's helpful. So word of mouth, people just learn about Cool IT. But it's a combination of traditional public relations and various different directed marketing campaigns that we have to reach out to the right people.
Yeah, absolutely incredible story there. And the moment you guys couldn't be a more relevant company today. I think that a couple of themes that I'm thinking about is that Bill Gates said that cryptocurrency should be I think he said they should be outlawed, or we shouldn't be using them because, man, it just burn up too much energy. And you guys are right in the heart of that conversation, is that you guys can make these processors way more efficient. So yeah, absolutely incredible story. Karen, turn it back to you on this. What are some of the opportunities that you're seeing out there? So we've already heard about how relevant you are internationally. This is a topic that everyone's talking about. What else are you talking about? How else are you seeking international collaborations?
Yeah, so we've got a few sort of pivot points that we're working on right now, or some growth points that we are approaching. Right, as you mentioned earlier, the ESG messaging for large corporates couldn't be more important. I think last year, Gen Z became the largest generation that has the most buying power going forward. And because we work in food, Gen Z is looking to see better performing food producers. And that has us engaged in conversations with the largest corporate food producers in the world. Cargill internationally has engaged with us, and that that the scope changes to be the large corporates spending money here, Starbucks, some of the bigger players. So that climate focus going forward and that ESG messaging has got us into a different, instead of going farm to farm, it has us looking globally at large corporate engagement. As well, when we look at Europe, we're looking at a green recovery program that they've put in place and that they're really working towards putting a lot of funding into. And then we've got CETA in Canada, the Canada-Europe trade agreement, which is really beneficial for Canadian companies to sell into Europe. And then there's new regulations, of course, around that we're seeing that can be a good avenue for us to sell into international groups. So overall, our international work has just been exploding. I mean, the contacts that we're getting have been, and I mean, this is inbound leads. We're pretty aggressive about our marketing. I'd say we're very aggressive marketing, but we're not, we don't have feet on the ground like Patrick was saying. So we're getting a lot of inbound leads, responding to that and putting dealers in place as we go based on these leads coming in. And I think, mainly it is around that ESG focus.
Yeah, and what a fantastic theme it is. I think that there's nothing more powerful than a company with purpose or a mission, and you've got that in spades. Patrick, same question for you. What are the opportunities that you're looking at in the next kind of 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think for us, you talked about it earlier, Pat, that the market is there for us right now, and so speed and time to market is extremely important for us, and so the faster we're able to collaborate with our customers, because we're always embedding our technology in their systems, the faster we can do that, the faster we're at revenue. And so what we like to do is try and bring as many tools as we can to bear. And sometimes it's as easy as the Zoom or the Teams. But when I think back to 2012, 13, when we started pushing some of our data center product, we'd be flying around the world every week, sitting at a boardroom for an hour, get on a plane, move to the next place. And that flipped on its head, but partially because of the pandemic, or at least reinforced that we can do it because of the pandemic. But being able to get in front of our customers more and more often with new digital tools, collaborating digitally is so important. And so our teams have just become so used to it. They're at home right now, they're working out of their houses, and they're still collaborating with people in Japan and the US and in France and Germany, wherever. And so to us, that's really some of the low-hanging fruit. If we can continue to hone our processes, our procedures, and how we develop physical product, but do it through these digital tools that we now have, so we can pick up speed and deliver product, even faster, the better off we're going to be, and the better we'll be able to seize this opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that, Patrick. And at this time, I'd like to invite Johnny and Terry to join us in the room again. And I'd like to invite the audience out there to punch a few more questions in here. I see that we do have a few questions in there, and let's start off. So I think the way to get your questions in is through the Q&A, and we already have a few here. Why don't I just start off and read one of these questions here? First question is, and why don't we make this one a jump ball? What are some of the unexpected things, good or bad, that have happened when working internationally?
I can start on that if you'd like. I would say a global pandemic has been pretty unexpected and not very great for us. We were mid-installation on a number of systems internationally when the borders closed, and we've really had to scramble a bit to try and get a virtual platform to approach installation of equipment. with VR, AR, and change our approach from having a live person fly from Calgary to the UK and install something, or even just go across the border into the US. So I think, I mean, not that anyone would have been prepared for that, but I think being prepared for having to do things virtually rather than just sending a person or using people power to do everything has been something we've learned from that. And it's really improved our system approach, where we can install with our clients based on video and VR. It's really expanded our product. So I think that's been a good and bad aspect of international work.
Yeah, Patrick, I'll add a comment there. One of the things I think that we've learned over the years is that for these large global brands, there's often a head office or a presence that does a lot of the early vetting, and as a result, then subsequently, recommends the product or the solution into the various geographies. One assumes that after making that investment, that the next step is pretty straightforward. And what we learned in early days, and this was working through KPMG, is that having the blessing of global head office for a solution does not mean that the regions will take you on. Bottom line, again, back to that understanding who you're selling into, those regional offices are their own business units. They operate their own P&L. And ultimately, it's I think this sentiment that was given. It's nice that they have a view on what we might need, but ultimately we make those decisions. And so the learning there was understanding that as much as reaching the global presence, it had to be repeated over in each of the geographies. And so that was something for us that there was an appreciation of that sort of relationship, but at the same time understanding what kind of effort that made. And again, when you're an emerging organization, that takes a lot of effort. And so appreciating what and where else that effort might have been spent to gain other customers. Now, the relationship we have with KPMG, for example, has matured, it's evolved, it's now probably in a positive situation, but those first couple of years, it was a question of whether did we make the right investment in both time and dollars to foster that early engagement.
And Terry, I would add on to that, it's similar for Cool IT in that some of the customers you work with are just so big. For some of the biggest companies in the world, their one engineering department is 4 times bigger than all of Cool IT. And we gear up and we get ourselves ready. We study the investment we'll need to make. We try to look at the ROI, and then we go in eyes wide open, but still go in hoping that we do a certain project, and they could have a Monday morning meeting over coffee and pivot. And it's no sweat off their back, and they just go to the next thing, and hopefully we can stay along for the ride. But it's tricky for us as a smaller company, and so I don't think we've found any silver bullet, obviously, that prevents that from happening, or we see it always coming. I think it's just knowing that it can happen, and being aware, and ensuring that when you do put dollars into a program or invest time and energy, that you're doing it at the right time, and you've seen enough of the program to come together. And the other thing for Cool IT is just that we're a hardware company for the most part, and so some of the challenges that we've had, across countries, is simply product related, right? A lot of what we do is custom, so we put something in somebody's hand, and all of a sudden one beveled edge is off by a few millimeters, and next thing you know, you've got an engineer on an airplane flying to Taiwan to hand deliver the next part because you can't afford to lose it. And so we've had lots of things that I can look back on now and maybe laugh a little bit, but have been challenging for us.
Yeah, and Pat, I think you talk about something really interesting there, especially in your business. There's the physics of your business, and then there's a culture of your business. And it's incredible that you guys are really right on top of that. Is that, yes, there's physical limitations, but I think so many companies forget that either subtly or in a big way, cultures are different, and you have to respect that when you're doing business internationally. Johnny, maybe give you a slightly different question on this, because you're the international customer buying into Canadian culture. How, what's your perspective on Canadian culture? Like, what kind of flavor has Chaotix added to what you're able to do?
That's not a question I have reflected on really previously. I would say that my experience is that we clicked really well, right? That there is, I would say, between I think initially when I started the Lego Group, we were probably not a model customer in that we were, I think, believing that we were buying a bespoke product, and at the same time, Chaordix were busy building a product as a service. And I think in aligning those expectations, something that we came through very well, I think. I would say that there is, and as we see that on most of the planet, I would say, but there is a nice fit in terms of cultural, like an ability to listen that I think is very important. And sometimes we're a messy and unclear and huge customer. I think it's it's hard for me to say exactly what it is, but we feel very comfortable in that relationship, and I've also had the fortune to be able to visit in person and visit Calgary and the surrounding area quite a few times, and I felt very welcome, even during the stampede, which I very much enjoyed.
We're hoping to gear that back up again soon, Johnny. Yeah, but thank you for that. I think maybe what you're talking about is that, yeah, it's hard to put into words, but there is something, and I've also, I think like you traveled around the world, there is something about Canadians that it's a little bit of a brag for ourselves, is that there is something about doing business in Canada and with Canadians, and I think you've captured that. That's absolutely fantastic. Let me bring the next question to the stage here. It's from Tommy P. It's, what precautions have you made in receiving payment from your international customers? Have you found yourself tapping the conventional bank network, or are you looking at some of the new payment processing entities?
I mean, I can comment as one of the things that we have prioritized in any new relationship is to get the banking information exchanged and work through to ensure that transfers can happen seamlessly, and that's not as complicated, I think, as it once was. At the same time, we have a strong focus. Often in dealing with large companies, we have one company that has terms of net 120 days, and so as a small organization, we're not in the business of financing an organization that's 50 times bigger than us. So the conversation up front in terms of how we structure our payment terms is obviously key. But we basically go through traditional wire transfers. Now we've had to expedite that, we've had to set up U.S. domiciled accounts for one entity because they won't transfer cross border. So little things like that, but we have not made any use of things like, I think it's EDC that has the program that guarantees payment. So we've been fortunate. I can tell you that in the 8 years, we have not had, knock on wood, one payment go bad. So, and we've been quite fortunate to work with some great customers. And at the end of the day, we go through that standard process where the business unit aligns, and we get past the purchasing. Purchasing has their job. They squeeze. And then at the end of the day, you're in that relationship and things flow. And so, we get regular payments, and it's worked out quite well. So we've been fortunate, I think.
Yeah, and Terry, you bring up a really good point there. I think there's, we keep hearing about fraud in payments, and it's a real thing. I sit on the board of ATB, and it's a major part of the risk formula for all banking institutions all across the world. So thank you for that comment. I think all these companies are really, it's a little less about new payment platforms because you are dealing with big enterprise customers.
Yeah.
But Tommy, appreciate that question. We have another question here, which is to talk about how at least 2 of the 3 companies here don't have any Canadian customers, and maybe dig into that a little bit. Karen, you talked about possibly on the precipice of bringing on a Canadian customer, which is great news. Maybe either Terry or Patrick, talk a little bit about that. How can we work together to change this?
I think it's interesting. For us, there's no doubt in my mind that we will have Canadian customers and Albertan and Calgarian customers at some point. That's just the way that data is working right now. But connecting locally doesn't always have to be going after your next purchase order, right? There are many different connections in Calgary that can help Cool-IT support skill development. It can be putting people on advisory boards. It can be doing any number of different things to support development of our company. We're not the first group in Calgary to reached out and do a lot of work in China. We're not the first group to be moving into Taiwan or work in Japan. And so finding those individuals in Calgary who've had that experience, especially for us, hardware product companies, is really important. And so I think we probably still don't do enough of that, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about is who's paved that path before us? Who can we talk to, and who can we find out from, what cliff we're about to walk off, or if we're on the right path. I think that's a big piece for us.
Yeah, the value, as Patrick mentions, there, the value of just the network here. It's very close. 2 phone calls and you probably can talk to the right person. I think for us, if I look back, we've like a lot of other companies, there's tons to do, and so you tend to hunker down, nose down, and sometimes lose sight of the value of continuing to tell your story locally, even though your customers aren't here. And so for us, the awareness of what we're doing obviously has the benefits, because eventually somebody will make a connection. So the last 6 months for us, I think, has shown that as people more appreciate some of the things we're doing, and we've consciously tried to raise that awareness. There's been the inbound calls, hey, I think someone can help you out here, or hey, I think there's an opportunity for you over here. And so we, like the others in the room, have had Canadian customers, but currently where we don't have any Canadian customers. We have US, we have Australia, we have Europe, and so those are the focus areas for us. But ultimately networking is valuable all across the board.
All right, so I think that's a challenge to everyone in the crowd, which is we got to get these companies some Canadian customers. So I'm going to put that on my list of things to do, guys. I'm going to try to get you a Canadian customer from my network.
Pat, I heard you say you're on the board of ATB now. A banking customer for Chaordix would be ultimate, and they've done a lot of this kind of work. So I think we could start right there.
Done. I'm actually, Terry, I'm serious about this. Follow up with me. I'm going to introduce you to Curtis, the CEO. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you.
Excellent.
So thank you for that. And same thing for Karen and Pat. I want to do this. I'm serious about this. And everyone on the call, please reach into your Rolodex and send these guys some intros. There's a question here about ESG. And Johnny, maybe turn this over to you, because on your closing note during your panel, you talked about D&I and voice of customer being so important. And so I'm wondering, how are you guys, the question from the crowd here is, are you looking at ESG as a way to leverage customers?
So I'm going to start with the question there, because I'm not sure I fully get what the ESG abbreviation is for.
Oh yeah, it's environmental, social, and governance.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, it's certainly a big part of what the LEGO Group wants to do, with a very strong mission in the world to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow to be part of a STEM, but also a 21st century life skill movement in the decades to come. We have the LEGO Foundation doing a lot of work, and I would say that it is important for us as a company. I don't feel super qualified to really talk about all that is done. I look after my product mostly. And here I would say that I think what is very important, I believe, for all innovation is a diversity of backgrounds, inputs, past experiences, everything. And so the quality of what you produce in terms of innovation output is only as good as the diversity of what you put in. And in that sense, as I mentioned, we would like to lower language barriers, for example, in order to simply that's a very simple place to start in terms, well, computationally it's not super simple, but it is a place to start in terms of broadening the ability for people to participate, which is really, I think, the very first thing is to open your doors, and that's what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, Johnny, I think it's just so important when you tie Lego in to these ESG themes, which is, Lego represents so many things to so many people. And when you talk about STEM, when you talk about diversity and inclusion, it's so great to hear that Lego is not just for boys. You're trying to promote STEM, and you're trying to make sure that there's gender equality, as part of the product voice. So important on that. Terry, maybe bring you in on this. How is, are you conscious of making sure that ESG is part of that voice in the community, or is there a way that Chaordix accommodates that?
I don't know if I would say we're directly. I mean, we obviously see the movement towards that with some of our customers. One of the things we did during the pandemic was offer community platforms for our customers to work with their employees. And so there was a little bit of movement around just some of the challenges that mental challenges relative to some of the changes the pandemic brought on, et cetera. So, and then, obviously diversity in the US is a big topic. And so our US customers are pushing it. I'm not aware of anything specific that's being done outside of what they practice internally. We certainly, through the membership, records profile information. That's at the control of the of the community owner. They get to decide what upfront they may be looking for, or what they may ask ongoing with the membership to understand exactly what the makeup is.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. We have a question here from Trish Redekop of Calgary Economic Development. Hello, Trish out there. It's been a while since we last talked. We got to get together. Her question is, have you ever had to say no to a customer? Maybe it's because it's too big of a project, or, how do you even evaluate a product? Maybe start with Karen on this one.
That's such an interesting question. I would just first off start with the Canadian brand is a very strong brand. And so when you're looking at international clients, there is a big attraction to get connected with Canadian brands. I think that we have not said no to a project, but we have said no to dealers that want to distribute our product, and maybe we're not aligned with them, but they really want to align with a Canadian brand. So, I mean, that kind of crosses over a number of topics here with respect to even getting paid on your project. The Canadian brand is very, very valuable, and don't be afraid to ask your international client to pay up front or to pay before it ships. I mean, we ship a hardware product, so we get paid before we ship for this product, and international clients are very receptive to this. In our experience, they understand they're buying something internationally and that they're going to have to wire transfer money before we let go of the product. So we've had no issues around that type of discussion, and no real issues around, is the project right for us, as long as it's in our niche. We have said no to people who are looking for different kinds of water treatment, where, turkey wash water, different types of product that might not be in our niche. I mean, we make clean water from manure, so it's, a big niche. But people then say, well, can you do other types of wastewater treatment? Can you do human waste treatment? And so we're pretty narrow in our focus there. But yeah, I mean, I think just dealers is who we've said no to.
Yeah, and Karen, thank you for that reminder. I think it's absolutely fantastic that you reminded that in business, there's the equivalent of basically sewing that Canadian flag patch on the back on your backpack. It's like, it's the same thing in business. Like, people want to know that we're Canadian, right? So thank you for that reminder. It's like, never ever hide the fact that you're Canadian. because it's absolutely respected out there. Terry, you want to pipe in on that one?
Well, yeah. I mean, the short answer is, absolutely. But, we, like probably most other early stage startup organizations, have gone through phases where, you ultimately couldn't afford to say no. So it was a matter of kind of trying to box it in such that there could be success on both sides, because the long-term impact of just taking on business that ultimately you or the customer are going to be successful is going to come back at some point in the future. So we're cognizant of that, and over time we've better shaped, as the markets evolve, better shaped our offerings so that we get more deliberate in terms of who we end up talking to. But I can tell you there was a couple of times in the life cycle of a business where it was pretty hard to say no, and in a few cases we didn't, and in hindsight maybe we wish we would have. But that's the balancing of that early stage. Cash is king at the end of the day. Business is good. You learn on every engagement you have, and so the opportunity to go through that is extremely beneficial. I mean, Pat and I worked at an early stage company for a cup of coffee. I mean, there was a lot learning there. I mean, we were scrapping it out on a daily basis just to get kind of longevity, kick the can down the road. Who knows what'll happen? And at some point things start to turn a line, and then you can basically become that 10-year overnight success, and away you go.
Yeah, right on. And unfortunately we're out of time. Like we could not be luckier with having these four panelists on board, and it just all these businesses, right? Super relevant, right in the heart of what's happening in today's economy. I want to thank all of you so much for your insightful comments. It's been absolutely amazing. At this time, I want to turn it back to Terry. Terry, thank you for arranging this. It's been a privilege to do this. And so over to you for closing comments.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you for doing this for us. Thank you for being a member of our advisory roundtable. Your advice and guidance in what we're doing is always helpful, so much appreciated. Thanks to Terry and Johnny, Patrick and Karen. This was a really insightful conversation. You know what I get excited about? We're opening a building in downtown Calgary that is going to be having these kinds of conversations happen every day. Local leaders, global leaders connected at the Platform Innovation Center. So I want to thank the Platform Calgary team, Jen, Milan, Dalia, and everyone that was part of this for being helping us get this going. I learned two key things. One is we have deep sort of technical capabilities in this part of the world that people want all over the world, and that we can actually build companies here that, despite not having local customers, can be global companies, can be successful. So although there's frustration about not having local customers, clearly it's not a barrier to people who work hard and build great companies. So thank you for doing that. I want to thank the City of Calgary and Alberta Innovates for your financial support for what we do. There's a link in the chat to a very short survey. You can take 90 seconds to fill that out. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated. Help us plan these events. So now it's time to save the date for Globalizing Calgary Tech Volume 6. It'll be on May 6th from 8 to 9:30 in the morning. And we're pretty excited about this. This is a case study that we've managed to pull together about WestJet's famous Hack at the Hangar, a hackathon that attracted tech firms and personalities from all over the world to Calgary to a hackathon in the WestJet hangar. The conversation will relive the hackathon, talk about the impact it had, and leave with tips on how to do it yourself. We're excited to have Alfredo Tan, Senior VP at Rogers Sports and Media and former CMO and CDO at WestJet, Dana Liu, Head of Marketing Solutions at LinkedIn, Natalie Ferran, the current VP of Digital at WestJet, and Jeremy Viana, Client Service Leader at Twitter and formerly at Huge Inc. That's going to be an amazing conversation rooted in Calgary, more on the corporate side, but linking right into startups. RSVP to development at Platform Calgary to join us at that event on May the 6th. Thanks again to everyone for joining us. We'll see you again in May. Have a great day.